Who was your most famous ancestor? Serious. Honestly not sure what their names were or if they count as famous, but some of my ancestors got kicked out of Scotland for stealing sheep. One of my great-great-great whatever grandfathers was close enough friends with George Washington to be pallbearer at his funeral. As far as I know, that's the best I've got related to someone who was friends with a famous person. Genghis Khan. What up, cousin? You got charcoal. My friend has the surname Khan and I tease her about this all the time. My great-grandpa, he survived World War I and World War II, nothing much but still badass emo. Oliver Cromwell, who died naturally but his body was then hanged. His head chopped off and his body mutilated. He was also famous for starting a British Civil War in the 1600s. He was also a massive dickhead to Ireland, as was the style at the time. My great-grandfather's brother was John F. Kennedy's nuclear advisor. So your great-great-uncle? My grandfather's cousin was on Apollo 13. For me, it was Sir Edwin Sandys, 1561 to 1629. My last name is nothing like his now, but everyone in my family claims we are related. My family member, Sandy, is even named after High Monsieur. As far as I know, Edwin was one of the first colonizers of Jamestown, Virginia. If you didn't know, Jamestown was one of the first colonies to be settled in the New World. It allowed Europeans to get a foothold in the New World and expand their horizons. I know that he was the treasurer of the colony and would have been a big deal in the colony for the time. My fourth cousin is in THNHL Hall of Fame. I come from a long line of poor, white farmers. Based on my own genealogical pursuits, I'm a direct descendant of a signer of the Magna Carta. That's going quite a ways back, though. Robbie Burns, famous Scottish poet. Well, I've read some of his work before. The Mathers from the Salem witch trials. I'm related to Rebecca Nurse on my mother's side. She was originally acquitted, but the judge's family had a dispute with her, so he demanded a retrial and found her guilty. From what I understand, Cotton Mather put a stop to the trials. One of my great-great-grandmothers was a nanny to Winston Churchill when he was growing up. Also, my girlfriend's cousin is the lead singer of a semi-famous band called Litany. Hitler. No joke. If you ever get an assignment for your family tree that includes your great-uncle's answer, something like that, I wish you a good luck. Neither Hitler nor his sister Paula had children. You may be related to Hitler, but he isn't an ancestor of you. They didn't specify which Hitler, so technically they could be right. Hitler had no known descendants. If he had illegitimate children, it's never been proven. Most people of European descent are probably related to Charlemagne. Do I get to do my own donkey of the day now? John Adams. Haha, mine is Thomas Jefferson. Guess we gotta fight now. We're related. Robert E. Lee, Civil War general. Same. Ingolf Arnarsson, the founder of Iceland. My uncle, Mom's only sibling, was one of the men lost while searching for Flight 19 in the Bermuda Triangle in 1945. He was a crew member on the Martin PBM-5 Mariner that was searching for 5 lost torpedo bombers in. Also mysteriously disappeared. I'm related to both the inspiration for Charlie Brown and the original Lucy Van Pelt from Peanuts. Ever read a story about a guy who went over Niagara Falls in a barrel and then later died from slipping on a banana peel? He's an uncle of mine somewhere along the way. My ancestor Richard Blackburn helped build the original Falls Church that Falls Church, VA is named after. Not the one currently standing, but its wooden predecessor. Have you been to the church recently? The windows in the main sanctuary are my favorite. I visited once. Walked around the exterior after hours while I was in the area. I live in a different state though. Marquis Lafayette. My ancestors actually had him stay in their house while he was campaigning in Virginia. My family isn't famous, but my dad is a war veteran and my great-grandpa survived the Gulag and World War II. Wilhelm II of Germany. My aunt had a genealogy expert do our family tree as a gift to us one year. And that's who they traced our family tree to. This probably isn't how the succession law would work, but I wonder if you would become king if A. Every family member of yours that was older than you died, and B. If the Germans decided to re-establish the monarchy. It's definitely fun to think about. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be first in line as I'm not the oldest. That could be resolved for a fee. Evil smiley face. FBI, is that you? Most of my ancestors were Southern preachers. Pretty much every male ancestor before my great-grandfather for as far back as I can track. Apparently a couple were kind of notable traveling preachers. One of them was a blacksmith before becoming a minister and was noted for being a very big, intimidating man. I like the image in my head of a big-ass blacksmith preaching fire and brimstone at some poor country folk in the 1800s. Very interesting. It's cool how you can hear about how others perceived him. I have European descent and most Europeans are probably related to Charlemagne, so I am probably related to Charlemagne. I was told that one of my ancestors is Abraham Lincoln. It's pretty cool. Sorry to disappoint you, but that's virtually impossible. The last descendant of Abraham Lincoln, his great-grandson Robert Todd Lincoln Beckwith, died in 1985, and never had children. There are no known living descendants of Abraham Lincoln. It's possible you are related to the Lincoln family, but not descended from Abraham himself. If that's true, you're also related to Tom Hanks. Cool. That's certainly something to be proud of if it's true. I have a relative in Spain who is a famous bullfighter. I hate bullfighting, I think it's horrific, but in Spain it's still part of the culture and he's apparently a pretty big deal. Descendant of a major royal family in India. Most famous guy was Raja Chola. Most famous relative was featured in Forbes. My family used to work for the British. Mitochondrial Eve, I guess. We constantly claim descent from Patrick Henry, but my family are idiots and none of the genealogical research I've done goes that far. In fact, with census records and everything, all I've managed to do is get to around the early 19th century. We are almost certainly not related to Mr. Henry, Samuel Jordan and Charlemagne the Great. Though my understanding is that when he's kind of guesswork based on some loose historical connections that other people have researched. Jordan was an original member of the House of Burgess and part of the Jamestown colony. Up until myself, it's almost a direct mail line right back to High Monsieur. Greater than almost a direct mail line right back to High Monsieur. Are you guys pen pals or something? Yep, he spells better than I do. Jesse James. I think my great-grandma X5 was his mom or wife. That's what my mom told me. Ancestry.com's free trial is a great way to figure out if the family stories, legends are true. Though independent verification is important if one ever to get serious about it. Turns out my family's story of being related to Jesse James is true. Second cousin. 5x removed, but the part about being Native American in any way is not. My neighbor's great-granddad was Eamon de Valera and my great-granddad fought in the Irish Civil War and got a medal signed by our president, so my neighbor's great-granddad and my great-granddad met each other. I don't know if this really counts, but my father traced some of our roots to a fishing village somewhere in Northern Europe. I forget where exactly. Anyways, there is a rock there that was dedicated to those lost at sea. And I guess about 35% of the names were my relatives. My 9x great-grandmother, Empress Myeongsung, aka Queen Min, last queen of Korea. Although I'm pretty sure all Koreans with a last name Min are her descendants, so it shouldn't be that uncommon. Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman. Supposedly David ap Gruffudd, the last independent king of Wales. The only gay in the village. Yes, me Von Wee. Bacardi and Coke please. A great-great-uncle who was high enough up that Al Capone's mother ate dinner frequently with my grandma's family. My grandfather's cousin was Boots Randolph. He was the saxophone player who wrote and performed the theme song to the Benny Hill Show. It's called Yakety Sax. Does that mean something? No. But now you know. And knowing is half the battle. I'm a descendant of one of the guys that traveled with Lewis and Clark. I can't remember the exact story, but he was close enough to one of them to be pardoned for something he should have been put to death for. I think the story goes that he was taken in by a Native American tribe when he was young, and sometime after the grand journey when they were all back home he was ordered to kill them so the settlers could have their land. He absolutely refused to do so, even after threatened with execution. One of the two was a leader of the group my many greats was with and was inspired by his dedication and love, and pardoned Hi Monsieur. Not exactly famous, but it's pretty cool. Also, when I was little and my family was getting into ancestry, we found out we were related to a Queen of England and they told me I was a princess because of it. I was so excited. We found out a couple years ago that the family member leading the research had misread it and we were actually related to a servant of the Queen. From riches to rags real quick. My great-grandfather. He was a medic in WW2. Got a Purple Heart and a Silver Star. I think that's right. After he pulled wounded men out of the middle of a battlefield. He was an army band leader. And he played at Eisenhower's funeral. This what my dad told me. My wife is a distant relative of John Wilkes Booth. My mom's cousin did those who you're related to things, and it said that she, meaning we, was related to Walt Disney, but IDK how accurate that is. Alfred Nobel. He died in 1896 and was famous for creating the dynamite. He created the Nobel Prize that Sweden has every year. It's on my mom's side, but I don't know exactly how, but my mom's parents got invited to the Nobel Prize dinners a couple of times because they were related. Samuel B. Morse. Apparently, only one other person from my family tree is mentioned in a book, and it's a Scottish ancestor that jumped ship from the Royal Navy. It's incredibly privileged to be able to trace so much of my ancestry. But on the flip side, it's incredibly boring to know that you're made from generations that married people from the same town, had kids who did the same, and never left the area for 8 generations. On my maternal grandmother's side, I'm distantly related to the first guy to swim the English Channel. I'm not exactly sure, but my grandmother's great-uncle Philip Whalen was a murderer, and her great-aunt was one of the first people in either Boston or New York to be treated for childhood leukemia. I think her name was Mary something. More about the murderer. William Henry Harrison. I am a huge fan of William Henry Harrison. I've been to Berkeley Plantation and everything. That guy did it all. Not really ancestors, but the Clutter family from in cold blood are relatives of mine. My great-grandfather was cousins with Mr. Clutter. My great-grandfather brother was even mentioned in the book Visiting the Family Home. I've been to their graves in Garden City, Kansas. My mom's side of the family originates from the depths of Scotland. And my great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-uncle is King Robert the Bruce of Scotland. Alexander Fleming, inventor of penicillin, is also a distant cousin, as we say in Scotland. Right. The Fleming one might be true, the Robert the Bruce one is nonsense. I don't know. My mom did some pretty hefty research into our family history, and we have some really old records of family trees, etc. And, as far as that side of the family is aware anyway, we are directly descended from the younger brother. I'm not completely stupid though. I do take family legends like that with a pinch of salt. Like the story of the however many greats-grandfather who married a fairy. Monsieur. Most Scots my age can only trace back to great-great-grandfathers. At best no real records at time of Bruce. Many fakes. I mean Meghan Markle, Tilda Swinton, John McCain all claim to be related along with 10,000s of Americans. In Scotland, perhaps a couple make the climb assure. I see. I think, in our case, it might be slightly more plausible than in the case of the people you mentioned. Because A, our family still lives in either Scotland or England, and B, it did used to be very high class and rich. Only a couple generations ago. None of that money anymore. Unfortunately. So the fact that the family didn't emigrate and still mainly lives in Scotland, in that it used to be more socially significant, increases the chance of there having been more documentation of the family's history. Also, I feel like I need to just say that I'm not trying to argue with you. Frankly, you're making a much better point than I am. I just love discussing things with people. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.